Hello, welcome to today's recording from the Connect Fund, which is focused on our theory of change and our evaluation process. So I'm Liz Hayes, I'm the Assistant Manager of the Connect Fund, and I'm joined with Anoushka.
Hi, I'm Anoushka Kenley. I work for New Philanthropy Capital. We're a think tank and consultancy, and we're working with the Connect Fund to help them think about the impact of the fund on the investment market.
So today we're going to be sharing the Connect Fund's refreshed theory of change and explaining a bit more about our evaluation process that we're going through. And Anoushka is going to speak a little bit about the survey that we've sent out to all of our grantees and the qualitative interviews that we're going to be running later in the year. And we're also going to give a little bit of follow-up from the feedback session that we held at our learning community event in October. And some of the next steps that we're going to build on from that. So before we kind of get into our theory of change, I just wanted to cover what is a theory of change. So as the slide says, a theory of change is a narrative or diagram that describes how you expect outcomes to occur over the short, medium and longer term as a result of your work. So it can be developed at the beginning of a piece of work to help with planning, or describe an existing piece of work and help evaluate that. So we did have a theory of change in existence, but we've refreshed it in light of feedback and learnings from our grantees as we've gone through the process. So it's a much stronger theory of change now. It's particularly helpful when you're working on a complex project like the Connect Fund, where we're looking to not only evaluate the outcomes from the individual projects, but also to look more broadly at the collective impact of the Connect Fund on the social investment market. So theories of change come in many forms, and some of the key components are outputs, which are the products, services or facilities that come as a result of your project activities, and these are often measured quantitatively. So for example, number of users or how many sessions have been run. There's also outcomes, both intermediate and long-term outcomes. So they're the changes, benefits, or learning from what a project does. So the intermediate outcomes demonstrate the short-term steps to achieving your final goal, and it usually involves changes in users' knowledge, attitudes, behaviour. And ultimately, they all lead to the ultimate aim, which is the broader change a project or organisation is trying to achieve. So that is the kind of what a theory of change is and why we did it, and why it might be interesting to you to look at the Connect Fund's theory of change, particularly as grantees or investees or people looking to work with us in the future. Is firstly, it will give you a greater understanding and clarity about the aims of the Connect Fund and how the work that you're doing on your Connect Fund projects will contribute to our longer term outcomes and the overall vision for the fund. The theory of change has also helped us determine what we need to measure. So you can kind of hopefully link back from the data that we've asked you to collect to see why we're collecting that data and how we're going to use it. And it can be helpful to understand what information you might want to look to monitor as part of your Connect Fund project. It also helps us to focus our attention on the key issues that we're looking to address. So we will evaluate our work against this framework, and we should be able to identify any further challenges or barriers within the infrastructure of the social investment market that we can then build on as we refine our funding strategy going forward. So let me show you our revised theory of change. So as you can see, we've split it into short-term intermediate outcomes, longer-term strategic outcomes, and we've kind of got a very succinct sentence for each of the themes that we're looking to achieve over the long term. And then we have our overall vision at the end. To accompany this, we've got a narrative document outlining our measures of success. And so our theory of change follows the format of Access Foundation's theory of change too. So it fits quite nicely with their theory of change that they developed. And the measures document includes some of the key questions that we're looking to answer. And in order to measure our progress against the intermediate short-term outcomes, those questions will kind of feed into that journey. We'll publish the final theory of change and the measures of success document on our website shortly, and on the Trello board, but you can kind of see an overview of the key things that we're looking for and the changes that we are looking to enact in the social investment market. We've divided it up by the various themes that projects are working across, and so hopefully now looking at the short-term and long-term aims for each of those themes, it kind of gives a bit more clarity about their descriptor as well. I think we'll just move quickly on to the evaluation process. So we partnered with New Philanthropy Capital to help with our evaluation, and Anoushka and Plum Lomax were, who some of you might have met at the Learning Community event, have been supporting us as we've done this. So they've supported us to kind of refresh our theory of change, refine some of the measures that we're looking to collect against, and then we are employing a lot of different kind of tools and resources to kind of collect that data. So in addition to the grant reports that we receive routinely from our grant holders and investees, we're also introducing an outputs monitoring form, which some of you may have already completed as part of your recent round of monitoring. That collects kind of quantitative data. So it's the numbers, the number of networks, the number of organisations you're working with, the time you spent with those, and it also asks you for a bit of information about some of your partners or collaborations that you've established through the Connect Fund. So that kind of number data will help us kind of look at the reach of the Connect Fund and various things through that. We're also, as I mentioned earlier, we have launched a survey which closes in the next couple of weeks. It's actually on the 14th of January it closes. If you haven't received the link for that as one of our grantees, then do let me know and I can share it with you again. And we'll also be carrying out some qualitative interviews. So at that point, I'll hand over to Anoushka, who's going to talk a bit more about that.
Firstly, on the objectives of the survey and the interviews, as Liz touched on earlier, these are really intended to help us assess how the Connect Fund is progressing against that theory of change. So if you are interested enough or have enough time, you might notice that the questions in the survey reflect the outcomes in the theory of change. So when we look at the survey responses, what we'll be actually looking for is to assess what they mean in terms of the Connect Fund's progress against that theory of change, and that's how we'll report the findings. So you'll be able to see the relevant sections of the survey, what they told us about how the theory of change is being achieved. And as such, it is really important, as Liz said, to get a good response rate to the survey. I think it will take about 15 minutes. So hopefully you've all got time to complete that before the 14th of January. And as I said, it's important for understanding both how the Connect Fund is progressing, but also where there are still gaps, where there's still more things to focus on and achieve in the market. I think the plan is to run that survey annually. So what we also will be able to see is track changes in the market over time. And I'm sure that's information that the Connect Fund team plan to share. So hopefully that will be interesting for everybody. The other thing to be aware of about the survey is that if you identify partners that you're working with in your monitoring forms, we might send part of the survey to those partners as well, the questions that relate more to the social investment market more widely rather than specifically the activities funded by. So alongside the survey, we'll also be running a series of interviews, and these are basically about adding a bit more colour and detail on top of the findings from the survey. So in part, what those interviews will be doing is picking up on any issues that the survey highlights. And they'll also be examining some of the outcomes in the theory of change that are probably a bit better understood through conversation and through survey questions. So if we're trying to get our heads into the idea of how effectively is information shared, what is the consensus on this issue, how is it shifting. Those are the sorts of things that we'll be exploring more in the interviews. I expect we'll interview around 15 organisations in total. That will be in February and March next year. So once the survey results, we're doing that. NPC plans to choose those interviewees. They'll be selected at random, but intended to cover a range of geographies and organisations. If you're very, very keen to be one of those interviewed organisations, then feel free to let us know, and we'll aim to take it into account. But we'll be looking at a sort of selection of geographies and organisation types. Those interviews will be over the phone. I expect they will take around 30 to 40 minutes. And they'll be conducted by NPC, so potentially me, but also potentially my colleague Plum or another colleague from NPC. And the reason that NPC is conducting those is so that although the Connect Fund team will know who we're talking to, we'll be able to anonymise those responses, so you can be very open and honest and speak to us. So the intention of all that together, which is the surveys and the interviews, is that they'll paint a picture of where we are currently, what the current gaps are in the market, in the social investment market, and how we, as I said, identify what are the ongoing gaps, where should the Connect Fund be focusing going forward. And I think the last thing to say, just on evaluation process, is that there will be more opportunities for feedback in the future. So if you're not interviewed this time, don't worry. So that might be at future learning events, or there might be further rounds of interviews later on in the fund lifetime. And we will be writing up and sharing the findings from all those surveys and interviews with you guys. So alongside the theory of change, spring next year, that should be quite an interesting piece of research that you'll be able to have a look at.
Yeah, it's great that we're working with them, because like Anoushka said, it means that we get that anonymised feedback, so we can understand what your challenges are, where you think that we're doing better, where we're doing well, and that's all been really valuable. The workshop that we held at the Learning Community event that Anoushka did was some really valuable feedback. So just to give you a kind of overview, if you're involved in those that kind of facilitated feedback session, it was designed to give us feedback around whether the objective of the Connect Fund is broadly understood and making progress in addressing the current needs. It was asking what else we should be focused on and how the Connect Fund is contributing to market development more generally. And as I said, we had really valuable feedback, and we took a lot of that on board when we were revising the theory of change, and kind of fed that into tightening up the language we were using and how we kind of split things out into the different themes and what we were looking to measure. Something else that we got feedback on was how we could better support the learning community, which is a really important part of the Connect Fund as we see it. And something that came out really clearly through both the feedback session and the avoiding duplication workshop that I ran was that everyone wanted a bit more opportunity to be connected to other Connect Fund projects, working on similar themes and similar topics. So one thing that we've taken from that is we always plan to do smaller kind of peer learning events, but we are going to focus them on specific topics and themes to make them most useful for those involved. So we have currently compiled a kind of selection of topics that we think are relevant across a broad range of our grantees, and there's quite a variety of it on the list, and we'll be sending out a form shortly where you can indicate whether you'd be interested in the topic, if you're working on it, if you'd like to find out more about it. And then our plan is that we will find a suitable venue outside of London, so it'll be across England, to bring a smaller group of people together to focus purely on that topic, share their learning, share their knowledge, share resources if appropriate, and hopefully that will give you a good opportunity to connect into other people, learn from what they've been doing if they're further along on their project that's quite similar to yours. And we're also thinking about getting other key stakeholders involved, so it might be a good opportunity to kind of feedback to the wider market about what the challenges are or what barriers you might have perceived to be. So we'll share more information about those events and how you can get involved in them a little bit later this month, I think. But yeah, so that's kind of where our plan is for developing the learning community. But any kind of particular topics that you really would like to see, do email us or pop them on the Trello board and we can feed that into the list before we send it out. Okay, so I think that kind of is a very brief overview of everything. As I said, we're going to be publishing the theory change diagram that was on the slide earlier and the measures of success document on the website and on the Trello later this month. So do comment on there if you've got any questions, if you want to talk through anything, or if you want a bit more explanation about any of that or how we got to our final theory of change, do get in touch. The survey will close on the 14th of January. So again, let me know if you haven't got the link to complete that. And thank you to all of those who have already completed it. It will really help when we're preparing for the policy interviews. So they'll take place towards the end of February, start of March, and we're hoping to have a kind of short progress report on the Connect Fund and what its impact has been to date around April 2019, maybe, that kind of springtime. So keep your eyes peeled for that. So I'll just say thank you to Anoushka for joining today's video, and I hope you found it useful. Okay, thanks a lot.